Discover the incredible moment my SIL called me a plumber. He had no idea I owned that yacht. Bridget stood at the edge of the sprawling green lawn, a place where laughter floated like the sweet scent of grilled chicken, and the chatter of her brother-in-law's high society friends echoed around her. Just a plumber, Barry had said, dismissively scoffing at her profession. A single jab that stung like the bite of a venomous insect. Here she was, a 38-year-old single mother with a history of hard work and resilience, feeling suffocated beneath the weight of Barry's derision and the suffocating expectations of his affluent family. The barbecue was festive, cheerful, but she felt like an outsider stranded on an uncharted island, lost under the brightness. It wasn't supposed to feel this way. Bridget's history with plumbing was a badge of honor, a testament to her grit. The little contributions reminded her of years spent learning the trade, the satisfaction of fixed pipes reflecting her dedication to her children. Yet, as she flipped burgers, her mind spiraled. Did owning a yacht somehow mean less if that yacht came from blue-collar sweat? She gripped the spatula tightly, muscles tensing, internal conflict steadily escalating. Suddenly, the sun dimmed, shadows creeping over her like the swirl of her doubts. She thought of the yacht, the one tucked away in the harbor, its polished hull and refined beauty. Tempting escape overshadowed by the looming storm clouds threatening capricious chaos. What if those dark, rolling masses above mirrored more than just the weather? Her heart raced. Her yacht could easily be damaged. Forcing her to confront her brother-in-law's dismissiveness, lay her pride bare in a way that felt terrifying and vulnerable. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The sky rumbled, mirroring her agitation. Frank, the elderly yacht mechanic who understood the soul behind the craft, had often assured her that every scratch on that boat told a story of resilience. She wished she could share it, but the socialite world she found herself in reduced her life to a joke. What would it mean to really reveal herself, to plot a transformation at the family bash? They dismiss her dreams as fantasies, cheapened by an old profession and belittled by Barry's smug remarks. As the family gathered for a toast, her heart beat aggressively. Tension tightened around her throat. Was she ready to step out from the shadows, reveal the truth of her ambitions, to place her foot firmly in the world of privilege they manipulated? As she contemplated the whirlwind, a frantic message from Frank broke through her thoughts. Damage to her yacht, irreparable before the bash. Her insides twisted. Was she to reveal the triumphs of her labor, only to be met with insatiable contempt? The moment hung like a storm cloud poised to break. Bridget stood on the precipice, her heart heavy with the weight of choices, the dawning awareness of losing the only true claim she had to herself, all while questioning if she'd ever belong to a world that could never see her, just a plumber. Would she risk it all to reclaim her narrative, or would she let the old perceptions drown her attempts at connection? The horizon beckoned her, but it loomed obscured, a cruel reminder of everything she wanted and feared to chase. Would the next storm break her? Dread pooled in Bridget's stomach like the storm clouds above. But amidst it, a flicker of defiance ignited. Barry's words echoed in her mind, an insistent reminder of the disdain she faced. What was it? This constant need for validation from a family who deemed her worth by the title of her job. For years she'd held on tightly to the notion that her trade was something to be proud of. Yet here she was, ready to transform her pride into a secret armor with steely resolve. She stepped away from the sizzling grill and toward the edge of the yard. The other partygoers continued to toast, oblivious to her inner turmoil. She took a breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs, searching for clarity in the chaos of her thoughts. Could she confront Barry? Could she stand tall in her truth? But what would it even look like? The anticipation of his mockery stung more than the thought of exposing her ambitions to the scrutiny of the crowd. She recalled the countless hours spent laboring away as a plumber, the pride of each completed job and the financial stability it provided for her children. Each pipe she fixed was a lesson in reliability and trust. It was time to siphon that pride away from the confines of her identity and raise it up. Energy surged within her, coaxing away the fear, and she pictured standing in front of Barry, undeterred by his dismissive laughter. The image was liberating yet frightening. Her inner voice prodded at her cowardice. It urged her to transform this gathering into her launchpad, and that moment, her phone buzzed again, another desperate message from Frank. There would be repairs to make, and she had no time to lose. But then another thought crashed over her, equally potent. This was not about a yacht, or any material possession. This was her life, her legacy. The superficial judgment from Barry didn't diminish her achievements. Rather, it illuminated the worthiness of her own journey with newfound resolve. Bridget smoothed her hair, straightened her back, and reframed her thinking. She'd had enough of shrinking. Perhaps revealing the truth of her accomplishments wouldn't just validate her, but also challenge Barry's perspectives. She considered the other guests. Would they laugh? Or could she inspire them to see beyond their curated lives? What if I opened the floodgates? She mused internally. The audacity of that thought sent a thrill through her veins. This was her chance. She could reveal who she truly was, not just a plumber, or an uninvited guest at an elite soiree, but a thriving woman who conquered her battles and crafted a life for her children and herself. As the music faded momentarily, Bridget marched back toward the crowd with a deeper understanding of her own worth. It wasn't about seeking acceptance, but rather about claiming her space. Just as she was about to raise her glass, Barry caught her eye. The amusement in his gaze sharpened like a blade, awaiting her strike. "Can I have everyone's attention?" she declared, holding her head high. A hush fell over the chatter, eyes turning toward her. The moment was electric, her pulse racing with equal parts fear and excitement. Her voice carried an unexpected strength. "I want to share something about myself that extends beyond your assumptions." She could almost see Barry's smugness dissipating, replaced by curiosity. The air thickened with the tension of unknowing, the echoes of necessity waiting to be transformed. What would emerge from this courageous moment? Would she take the throne, or would she be pushed back into the shadows? The answer remained tantalizingly out of reach. She was at the brink, and she could feel the storm brewing. Would she brave the tumult or retreat into the familiar? The next storm was upon her, ready to unleash. The crowd's eyes locked onto Bridget, each gaze like a spotlight, intensifying the weight of her words. The laughter, the jeering innocence of those present seemed distant, muffled by the drumming of her heart. Could she truly unravel the tapestry of her experience and wear it in front of her critics? "I'm a plumber," she began, her voice steadying with each syllable, "and I take great pride in my work." She noticed someone smirk. The gleam of condescension in their eyes stoked the fire within her. "While many of you see it as a mere trade, I've built a successful business from it, a business that supports my family and gives me purpose." Surprise flickered among the guests, some exchanging puzzled glances, others nodding as if to agree that there was value in such labor. Barry shifted, his expression contorting slightly. Was it confusion or a tightening of his conviction? Bridget pressed on, emboldened. "Every job I finish solidifies my belief in hard work. It's not just pipes. It's about creating a safe home for someone. It's about responsibility and trust. I've repaired kitchens that feed families, bathrooms that spark joy and comfort." As she spoke, she felt a sense of liberation. Each word shed layers of doubt, reinforcing an identity too long buried beneath the weight of society's expectations. She caught glimpses of empathetic nods and uninterested glares, but the latter no longer mattered. The storm she had feared transformed into a tempest of empowerment. "Last week, I fixed a pipe that had been leaking for months, an emergency for a single mom. She was stressed, overwhelmed by every day. The gratitude she expressed afterwards? That's what drives me. It's not just about money. It's about making an impact." The applause was soft but genuine, surprising her in its warmth. Could she actually shift the narrative? The external fear began to subside as she saw reflections of her courage in the crowd. Barry, sensing the shift, stepped forward, arms crossed, a thin smile curving his lips. "That's great, Bridget. But isn't it time to aim higher? Surely there's more to aspire to than that." She felt the barbs pierce her confidence but also recognized the digging for weakness. The boldness she had summoned came cascading back, urging her to bear her truth completely, to dismantle the illusions. "And let me tell you something, Barry. The yacht you mock? I own it. That isn't a trophy, it's the result of my dedication. The sacrifices I made to create stability. Thick silence enveloped the group. Shock echoed. Conversations paused, breaths held. For a fleeting second, the laughter morphed into disbelief, and Bridget's words echoed as a triumphant battle cry. I'm not just a plumber. I am an entrepreneur. I am a mother who built a life and defied the odds. Could she sense the scales tipping? Was this the challenge Barry and others needed to wake from their haughty stupors? Before she could embrace the moment, she noticed a subtle flicker in Barry's eyes, recognition, perhaps discomfort or realization. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it spiraled unsettlingly in her gut. Let us be clear, that doesn't mean I'm done growing. I am constantly striving for more. Each day in my workshop isn't just about plumbing. It's a metaphor for my life. I'm fixing what's broken one pipe at a time. With each drumbeat of her heart, the walls around her began to recede. But then, as Bridget held their gaze, she felt something shift within the crowd, a blend of admiration and a whisper of skepticism. Would she be accepted now, or would she be thrust back into the shadows of their prejudgment? The air thickened with this pregnant pause, and she realized she had just taken a definitive stand. Yet another challenge awaited outside these walls. As Barry opened his mouth to speak, another gust of wind rattled the courtyard, almost as if nature itself was urging her forward into the next chapter of her journey. Rising up is just the beginning, she thought. But what lay ahead? What true battles would she have to wage as she navigated a world still colored by preconceived notions? With a deep breath, she awaited the next wave, knowing her journey was just starting. The moment had come to face more than just Barry. Bridget inhaled, the air bracing her resolve as she prepared for Barry's response. She could see the gears turning in his head, the uncertainty morphing into defensiveness. He was about to react, to defend his worldview with all the bravado he could muster. Yet Bridget felt a flicker of anticipation. She had stepped into unfamiliar territory, a space where her own narrative held power. Look, Barry finally said, the condescension woven tightly into his tone. That's all very touching, but at the end of the day, it's still plumbing. Can you really see yourself as something more? Isn't there more to your aspirations than fixing leaky faucets? She felt an old frustration rise to the surface, the familiar urge to shrink back, to yield in front of someone who seemed so sure of himself. But as she stood there, every sense sharpened by the adrenaline of challenging stereotypes, she understood this was her moment to shift the paradigm. She wouldn't let someone dictate her worth or ambitions. More than plumbing? Barry, plumbing is just one facet of what I do. My clients trust me because I've established myself through commitment and expertise, she articulated, voice steadying with conviction. But trust me, there's a plan. I recently started developing a series of workshops aimed at empowering others in trade skills, especially women. This is how I aspire for more. Her words hung in the air, charged with a newfound intensity. Bridget could see the surprise play across the faces of some onlookers. For the first time, they were meeting her with the potential to see her as a pioneer, not merely a tradeswoman. Barry's smirk faltered momentarily. Workshops? He scoffed, but the edge to his tone suggested he was flustered, perhaps reconsidering his image of her. What makes you think you can teach others? Running a business is one thing, but sharing your knowledge is another. Bridget took that jab and turned it into an arrow directed back at him. What's wrong with teaching others the skills I've honed? You wouldn't understand the leap it takes to inspire and uplift someone else. Let me ask you, could you offer guidance to someone trying to carve out their own path? An uncomfortable silence ensued. Bridget's heart raced. This was the moment she needed to seize. With each word, she realized she was crafting her identity, dismantling the very prisons Barry had tried to build around her success. Eventually, Barry replied, voice dripping with disdain. You might enjoy shining your bright little light, Bridget, but let us not pretend it's a beacon for everyone. Maybe not everyone, she countered, leaning into the challenge. But it can be for those who understand the power of resilience. The strength it takes to hold a wrench and take control of your life. I'm not just here for praise. I'm here to open doors for others. And what if they fail? He asked sharply. What if they can't handle it? Then they learn, she said assertively, the affirmation ringing clear. Failure is part of success. It's all about what you do afterward. I want to create a culture where we celebrate these journeys, where every small victory matters. The crowd murmured, her words igniting a greater resolve in some. The idea of a communal effort, however small, began to dribble into their consciousness. Could she be addressing something far deeper than her own experience? Bridget felt an exhilarating sense of vulnerability, raw and potent. She was spilling truths that transcended her profession, linking the mechanics of plumbing to the philosophy of life. It isn't just pipes its survival, creativity, and empowerment. As she glanced at Barry, who stood momentarily shaken, she had a new question formulating within her. Was this disagreement stirring a dialogue, or was it merely his last stand against her ascent? Challenge me if you wish, Barry, she proposed. Critique me. But know this. Every time you doubt me, you might just be underestimating what I can achieve and the lives I aim to change. That statement lingered, an invitation wrapped in defiance. Bridget understood that the resistance she faced now rippled far beyond this ornate courtyard. She sensed that deeper battles awaited her, beckoning her to shape not just her narrative, but those of others ready to rise alongside her. With that, the exchange didn't conclude. Not yet. As the crowd began to murmur, digesting her words, Bridget felt the tension mount. A challenge loomed within Barry's eyes, a thinly veiled obstacle that begged her to stay cautious. What lay ahead was an arena larger than she had anticipated, and the stakes were rising. Bridget, invigorated, prepared herself for the next clash. She had ignited the fire, and she knew the true contest was just starting. Was the journey about to get even harder? What did resilience demand of her as she faced a society biased by preconceived notions? She was ready but had to brace for what came next. Her true battle loomed on the horizon, waiting to be confronted. The murmur of the crowd faded into an ambient buzz as Bridget collected herself, a whirlwind of adrenaline propelling her further into the confrontation. The remnants of Barry's disdain still lingered in the air, but she chose to let it fuel her resolve rather than dampen her spirit. Framing this moment as more than just a duel of wits, it was a personal manifesto, an unyielding declaration of her ambitions. Bridget's mind raced, contemplating her next steps. She envisioned her workshops, a space where she would not only impart skills but also infuse her passion into the very fabric of her teachings. She craved a model that went beyond the technical. It would motivate, inspire, and challenge the societal mold she had fought against for so long. But therein lay a gnawing question. How could she convert this fervor into reality? Think big, Bridget. This is your time, she thought, her conscience urging her forward. It was crucial to approach this plan strategically. Naming the workshops wouldn't be enough. She needed a branding element that encapsulated her vision, something inviting yet empowering. A name that could resonate with both aspiring tradeswomen and skeptics alike, a balance of heart and grit. Her thoughts were interrupted by Barry's voice, dripping with sarcasm yet underscored with a hint of vulnerability. So you're going to change the world with a wrench and a few lessons? Sounds ambitious. The audience's gaze shifted towards her, some narrowing in skepticism while others showed a flicker of intrigue. A surge of emotion coursed through her. This wasn't just a challenge. It was an opportunity. Yes, Barry, exactly that, she shot back, determination surging through her veins. It begins with one person believing they can do more than what the world has prescribed. I'll be their catalyst. She saw a few nods among the crowd, the seed of her idea planting itself in some minds. A flutter of uncertainty rippled through her. Would she really be able to pull this off? The doubts crept in. The market had its rules, and so did people's perceptions. Could she navigate it all? Who would support her ambition? Questions spiraled, but Bridget honed in on one thought. She needed to start small. The confrontation with Barry ignited something deeper within her, an instinct to lean into the fear, allowing it to morph into actionable steps. What could she offer? Maybe she could start a free session at a local community center, gather a few women who wanted to learn basic plumbing skills, and grow from there. Organic growth, she decided, might build the foundation sturdy enough to weather challenges ahead. She envisioned lively workshops with laughter and wisdom echoing off the walls, a place where personal stories intertwined with technical know-how. I'll empower them. I have to believe they can thrive. Yet in the back of her mind, the critical dialogue with Barry lingered. Did he sense that beneath the bravado he projected, there lay a fragility? Or was he merely playing a part he felt slotted into? What if, behind his disdain, the cracks in his own projection left room for his insecurities? As much as she wanted to dismiss him, Bridget couldn't ignore the need for perhaps understanding his motivations, what drove him to belittle her aspirations. Each moment oscillated between her determination to push forward and the challenge posed by Barry. The tension was unmistakable, a duel of integrity and ambition, and Bridget sensed she had only begun to unravel the fundamental questions of respect and acknowledgement in a field long dominated by men. Her heart raced with anticipation of not just the workshops but the tough conversations that awaited. Each confrontation carried the potential for change, both personal and professional. On the horizon sketched a new battle. The thought haunted her nevertheless. What internal ghosts would she have to confront on this path toward self-actualization? And as Barry eyed her warily, Bridget couldn't shake the feeling that her journey was about to demand more than she had ever anticipated. What did it mean to transform not just her world, but to unsettle the very foundations of those who would question her? The next move was essential. Barry was only the beginning. Bridget took a deep breath, the thrumming in her chest steadying as she moved toward her first significant step. The days following the confrontation felt like an avalanche of ideas, cascading down, each one urging her to act. She pulled out her notebook, the pages already marred with frantic scribbles and sketches of workshop structures, lesson plans, and potential marketing strategies. It was time to articulate her vision. She dedicated herself to outreach, researching community centers that had previously hosted workshops. Each call felt like a small victory, but also a reminder of the challenge ahead. "We need more female representation in trades," she argued to one skeptical director. "These are skills that can change lives, and I want to start right here." With every conversation, Bridget found herself sharing her own story, the struggles of breaking into a male-dominated field. As she spoke, she unveiled layers of vulnerability, intertwining them with the tenacity that drove her. Standing firm against resistance became second nature. Each no only strengthened her resolve. By the week's end, she secured the community space, the first tangible milepost of her enterprise. Yet there was still Barry's mocking voice playing in her head, reminding her of the uphill battle. Was she really just indulging a whimsical dream? Naivety danced dangerously close to her ambition. She could feel it breathing down her neck. The decision hung like a pendulum. Would she confront the growing fears about her capability? As she walked through the vacant space of the community center the day after her victory, she envisioned chairs filled with eager faces, the space alive with the energy of shared discoveries. Bridget felt the walls pulse with potential, and for a fleeting moment, hope eclipsed doubt. That hope found its ground as she started drafting her first workshop outline, Foundations in Plumbing. With her technical knowledge and newfound excitement, she crafted sections, including hands-on demonstrations and discussions about the obstacles women face in the trades. It felt tangible, almost electric, but doubt nudged at her. Would anyone even show up? Who was she to believe she could form a community? The ink hadn't even dried on the paper before she decided the best way to quell her apprehension would be to venture out to find participants. Hitting the streets, Bridget flyer in hand, she engaged women she encountered at coffee shops, bookshops, and on sidewalks. What if learning basic plumbing could empower you? What if this was a step toward more freedom in your lives? The questions ricocheted off her tongue, each interaction slowly morphing her from hesitant hopeful to passionate advocate. As she gathered names for her list, Bridget became acutely aware of her own progress. She was not merely promoting a workshop, she was igniting a conversation. The fear of inadequacy dissipated, replaced by a burgeoning confidence. Each woman who expressed interest was a validation of her mission, a silent nod that perhaps, despite Barry's words, she was tapping into a depth of need. Still, in quiet moments, a lingering uncertainty seeped back in. Could she even deliver on the promise she was making? One evening, as she paced in her kitchen, she felt compelled to reach out to an old mentor, someone who had shaped her path. Calling Clara, a fellow tradeswoman turned business consultant, Bridget sought not just advice but a challenge. "What if you mentored me as I mentor others?" she proposed. Clara's laughter was buoyant, but it was the weight of validation that settled in Bridget's stomach. "Oh, you are starting a revolution, dear. I have no doubt you'll be phenomenal." Flushing with a mix of pride and trepidation, Bridget scribbled notes from their conversation, not just about what to include in her workshops, but on presence and authority. The anecdotal recollections Clara imparted sparked new inspiration how to engage the unwilling and inspire the unsure. It was all building to something monumental. But with every revelation, Bridget felt the actionable weight grow more profound. She wasn't simply committed to her own success. She was about to plunge into waters where she could influence lives. Then, just as she found her rhythm, an abrupt knock rattled her thoughts. It was a text from Barry asking to meet. What could he possibly want? Was this the confrontation she had been preparing for? How would he respond to her newfound drive? Would he come with a challenge or with a revelation of his own? Whatever the case, Bridget steeled herself. This was more than just a meeting. It was another opportunity to redefine the perception of women in trades. A sense of purpose surged through her. The tide was turning, and standing still was not an option. As Bridget prepared to answer Barry's challenge, she knew that the time had finally come to face the complexities lying beneath their rivalry. Bridget stood at her kitchen counter, heart racing as she stared at the text from Barry. His request for a meeting stirred a storm of emotions within her. Anticipation mingled with trepidation as she pondered his intentions. Did he want to belittle her efforts, or was he curious about her newfound purpose? Either way, she resolved to confront whatever awaited her with unwavering resolve. As she dressed for the meeting, she reveled in the transformative journey she had begun. Each decision to step forward, each commitment to her workshop felt like a chain drawing her closer to her true self. The old fears, remnants of doubt and insecurity, began to feel like distant echoes, though they still had a way of resurfacing. What if he is right? What if I really can't make a difference? Bridget took a deep breath, steeling herself against the rising tide of uncertainty. She was no longer just a woman with an idea. She was a burgeoning force, ready to disrupt the status quo. She walked to the cafe where they agreed to meet, the air thick with possibility as she imagined her workshop thriving with attentive participants. When she arrived, Barry was already at a table. The self-satisfied smile on his face hit her like a slap. It sparked an old frustration, igniting a fire in her that demanded she not back down. "Bridget," he greeted, leaning back in his chair, exuding an air of superiority. "I hear you're making quite the plans for a plumbing workshop. Exciting stuff." "Thanks for noticing," Bridget responded, maintaining eye contact. Her voice was measured, but inside, she could feel the stakes rising with each passing moment. "It's more than just exciting. It's necessary. Women need to know they can thrive in trades." Barry chuckled, the inflection mocking. "But do you really think you're going to make a significant change? You're one person. It seems a bit ambitious, don't you think?" The doubt in his tone fueled her determination. "Ambitious? Perhaps. But I've learned that ambition can also lead to action. I'm about to empower a lot of women. I have the skills, the knowledge, and a plan." He scoffed, leaning forward, elbows resting on the table. "And what happens when they realize it's harder than they imagined? You can't just hand out a toolbox and expect miracles." Bridget's heart raced, not out of fear, but with a profound clarity of purpose. She realized this was not just about proving him wrong. It was about reinforcing her conviction. "Every time I failed, I learned something valuable. I want these women to experience that resilience. It's not about handing out tools. It's about enabling them to use those tools and find their own strength." His gaze narrowed, as if he was gearing up for a counterattack. "What makes you think you can teach them anything worthwhile?" Her pulse quickened. "Because I've earned my place. I've been exactly where they are now, unsure and stumbling. I understand their perspective, and that authenticity gives me a leg up over someone who's never faced the challenges we do." Bridget's fervor radiated from her words, disarming Barry's skepticism just enough that she could see a slight shift in his demeanor. She understood then that she could not only challenge his doubts but use them as a springboard for her growth. The conversation shifted. They discussed her plans in earnest, and Barry's objections began to morph into questions that hinted at a flicker of engagement. Yet, as the minutes slipped by, a nagging question emerged in her own mind. What if he really was just trying to distract her? What if this meeting was only about undermining her resolve? As they wrapped up, Bridget held Barry's gaze, unwilling to let him leave without showing her strength. "I appreciate your concerns, but I'm committed to this. My workshops are happening, and they're going to be successful because I refuse to accept anything less." Barry raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. Well, I'll be watching. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out for you. His challenge hung in the air, thick with tension. As they parted ways, Bridget felt the weight of their conversation pulling her forward. She had not just stood her ground, she had revisited the essence of her purpose. Stepping out into the crisp air, she took a moment to breathe it all in. With every encounter, she learned about herself, and every confrontation carved a deeper path into her future. But the lingering question remained. Would she be able to match her actions with the vision she held? As she walked away, her mind buzzed with ideas, and one nagging realization struck her. Barry was not the only person questioning her. She was also wrestling with her own doubts, and as she prepared for the upcoming workshop, the next confrontation loomed on the horizon. Would she have the courage to stand firm when the real battle began? Bridget stood in her living room, staring at the walls that had once felt suffocating, but were starting to morph into a canvas of possibility. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the scattered notes and sketches that lay on her coffee table, testaments to her burgeoning plans. With the meeting with Barry behind her, the uncertainty of her path still lingered, but it had ignited something within her that was impossible to ignore. She paced the floor, allowing her mind to swirl around the ideas she had neglected in the past. How could she structure her workshop to not just teach plumbing skills, but also instill confidence and resilience? The thought thrilled her. Every stroke of the pencil on paper translated into ambitions, dreams flickering on the brink of reality. Yet, doubt crept in again. What if she stumbled in front of her first participants? What if they saw her as just an imposter wearing an authority she didn't truly possess? Bridget closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Embracing those doubts was part of the journey. She recalled the feel of the tools in her hands, the satisfaction of problem-solving when things went awry. From those moments she could draw strength. With newfound resolve she reached for her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the dim room. As she typed out her objectives for the workshop, words flowed with a clarity that surprised her. Each goal she set was a reflection of both her experiences and the desires to empower others. If I can do this, they can too, she murmured to herself with determination. But as she crafted her curriculum, another thought nagged at her. The importance of integrating community. Women looking to break into the trades would need a support system to navigate the challenges. And so she altered the format of her workshop. Not just a series of lessons, but a blending of shared experiences, the failures and triumphs that would create a tapestry of connectivity. That night, she settled into a rhythm, dedicating herself to reaching out to potential participants, utilizing social media and networking locally. Each interaction felt like planting seeds, the possibility of growth sparking excitement in her veins. Yet, with every message sent, a fraction of her worried about the reactions they might bring. What if they thought she was foolish? What if no one cared enough to join? The following week brought the first challenge. A post went viral for all the wrong reasons. A colleague sharing a derogatory comment about her venture on social media. The barrage of negative feedback flooded in, and Bridget felt the air thicken around her, suffocating under the weight of criticism. At that moment, it would have been easy to slip back into self-doubt, easy to query her mission, to doubt her capacity. She stared at the screen as waves of panic washed over her. Then she remembered Barry's words during their last exchange, the way he had scoffed and minimized her ambitions. She took another deep breath and forced herself to rise above it. Harnessing the weight of the criticism, she transformed it into fuel. If Barry didn't believe in me, why would I ever let someone else's skepticism dictate my path? With renewed determination, Bridget sought a way to respond. She typed a heartfelt, unapologetic message about her goals, asserting her position not just as a leader, but as a fellow learner on this journey. She invited any interested women to join her workshop. This created the necessary boundaries and the welcoming space she wished to cultivate. As the reactions to her post started flowing in, a mix of support and skepticism trickled in. But conviction solidified inside her. She wouldn't retreat. This was not about her anymore. It was about creating a pathway for others who faced similar battles. Bridget smiled at the outpouring of encouragement, and the doubt that had lurked in the corners of her mind began to dissolve. Perhaps the real battle wouldn't come from the judgments of others, but from the ability to rise above every challenge thrown her way. The first workshop loomed ahead, promising to be both a culmination of her efforts and a test of her resilience. Not only was she ready to lead, but she realized she was prepared to embrace the imperfections along the way, transforming them into lessons as the date drew nearer. An unexpected call from Barry's colleague left her ruminating on yet another confrontation. Curiously, she wondered, had Barry underestimated the extent of her resolve? Or was he merely waiting for the moment to pounce? The tension braided deeper into her journey, and she could feel the fraying strands pull tighter. With each pulse of anticipation, Bridget knew that she was on the precipice of something critical. Would she be ready when the moment arrived? Or would the doubts rise again just as she prepared to make the leap into new territory? Bridget stood before the mirror in her bathroom, staring at her reflection as she attempted to steady her racing heart. The first workshop was just hours away, and the anxiety coursing through her veins felt both foreign and familiar. She applied a coat of lipstick, trying to summon a sense of confidence that seemed elusive, yet necessary for what lay ahead. With a final deep breath, she forced herself to smile, determined to project assurance even when her insides twisted with uncertainty. She arrived at the workshop location, a small community center room filled with folding chairs and fluorescent lights. The anticipation hung thick in the air. She had arrived early, wanting to familiarize herself with the space before the participants trickled in. Walking around, she mentally rehearsed her introduction, a blend of personal anecdotes and encouragement, meant to break the ice and foster an inviting atmosphere. Yet, with every step she took, the specter of doubt whispered more insidiously. What if they didn't connect with her? What if her story fell flat? The door opened and one by one women began to filter in. At first they looked uncertain, some checking their phones or scanning the room. Bridget swallowed and greeted each one warmly, forcing herself to remember that they were all there seeking something, a chance to learn, a space to share, and perhaps, an example of resilience. Each handshake exchanged felt like an anchor, tugging her towards recognition that this was a collective journey. As the last of the participants settled into their chairs, Bridget took a moment to observe them, their varied expressions revealing a blend of her own nerves mirrored back to her. She flipped through her notes, the organized chaos of bullet points and tangents suddenly daunting. Plunging in seemed the only option. "Welcome, ladies. I'm so excited to be here with you today," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. "You may have seen some negative comments swirling around the internet about this workshop, but I can assure you, we're here to focus on building each other up." A few nods and smiles assured her that some were receptive. The vulnerability of sharing the negativity she faced felt liberating, transforming from a weakness into an emblem of strength. Over the next hour, Bridget facilitated discussions, encouraging each woman to share their own experiences. The stories poured forth, tales of personal challenges that resonated deeply, threading together a tapestry of intimacy and challenge. As the workshop progressed, Bridget found her rhythm. Each demonstration became less about showcasing her skills, and more about inviting dialogue and participation. She watched as the women shifted from hesitant observers to engaged participants, their voices growing stronger with each exercise. Failure stories turned into lessons, and the room pulsed with shared purpose. But just as the collaboration reached a crescendo, deep in the back of her mind, a chilling reminder of Barry lurked. That earlier confrontation she had experienced through his colleague echoed uncomfortably, teasing her resolve. She questioned whether it would all collapse under the weight of her own expectations. Would Barry's voice find a way to drown out the buoyancy brewing in the room? Bridget steeled herself. This was more than a workshop. It was a declaration of her identity and her unyielding belief in these women. We may not be perfect, we might even make mistakes. But isn't that where growth happens? A burst of laughter erupted, and she allowed herself to genuinely smile. It wasn't just about plumbing. It was about emerging from despair to become resilient in their shared ambitions. As they moved into practical exercises, she felt liberated by their energy. Yet she couldn't shake the nagging uncertainty that something could still derail this moment of triumph. The first hands-on task was a plumbing challenge, a confidence boost, or a potential disaster waiting to unfold. Would they falter? Or would they rise together? As the room buzzed with excitement and apprehension, Bridget's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down to see an unexpected message from Barry. The words were terse, a challenge masked as humor, subtly probing at her credibility. The moment had arrived. Would she rise to face this looming specter? Or would the shadows of self-doubt once again creep in? Bridget stood tall, the weight of Barry's message hovering in her mind, but she refused to let his words taint the energy building in the room. She clenched her fists, channeling the raw determination that had fueled her journey thus far. This was her moment not just as a mentor, but as a woman reclaiming her narrative and empowering others to do the same. Ladies, she began, gathering their attention as the murmurs faded, this is a chance to take steps forward. Today we embrace our fears and our strengths. Let us tackle plumbing together. The collective energy in the room shifted, a palpable excitement rising like steam from a freshly fixed pipe. The hands-on task involved repairing a mock leaky faucet, a seemingly simple challenge that became a powerful metaphor for life. As Bridget moved from group to group, offering guidance, she witnessed the transformation happening before her eyes. Women who had entered uncertain began to experiment, laughing and supporting one another, while a newfound confidence illuminated their faces. It was no longer just a workshop. It was their moment of victory. You got this. Remember, just like in our lives, sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to make something beautiful, she encouraged, and the laughter that followed wrapped around them like a warm hug. Her heart soared as she realized how far she'd come not just in her career as a plumber, but in redefining her identity within the world. Then came the pivotal moment. One participant, frustrated by her faucet, nearly quit before she started. Bridget moved closer and prompted, what if you see this challenge as an opportunity? Every repair, every struggle is part of your growth. As she reiterated her own struggles, the story of pushing past doubters, Bridget sensed the power of her vulnerability resonating throughout the room. The glances exchanged among the women transformed into nods of understanding, a shared recognition of resilience that lifted her. Bridget could see it, each interaction was planting seeds for the future, not just for these women, but for her own trajectory as well. As they wrapped up the session, the applause was thunderous, but it echoed something deeper than mere gratitude. This was acknowledgement of strength, of potential, and of change. Bridget's heart swelled, realizing she had achieved far more than a successful workshop. She had created a community, a space where women empowered one another. That evening, Bridget reflected on the contrast between her past and present moments as she tucked in her children. She remembered feeling small, and today she relished in the fact that she was not just a plumber by trade anymore. She had expanded her vision, establishing an identity that boldly defied the narrow perceptions of those around her. Then, a notification dinged on her phone. It was an unexpected message from Clara, expressing pride for Bridget's impact that day. You're on a remarkable path, Bridget. You've created something meaningful. That recognition was the final affirmation she needed. Recognition from those who understood her journey solidified her self-worth more than the hollow validation Barry aimed to undermine. With determination renewed, Bridget drafted plans for a follow-up workshop, a chance to dive deeper into plumbing skills while inviting guest experts to broaden their horizons. This would not merely be about fixing leaks. It would be about reinforcing the notion that women belong in trades, with a voice that mattered. As she finalized details, she glanced at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back was no longer an uncertain plumber, but an inspired and accomplished entrepreneur. With that, Bridget felt a magnificent rush of accomplishment. She had overcome the limitations set upon her, and in doing so, had lifted others along the way. Standing in her kitchen with a wave of satisfaction washing over her, she resolved to never allow the dismissive words of others to reframe her story ever again. She would continue to expand her workshops, challenge herself further, and build a legacy of empowerment and integrity for the future. The horizon shimmered with uncharted possibilities, and in that clarity, she knew her journey was just beginning. Now, will you step out of your comfort zone? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Bridget's transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. And don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know the significance of spreading this message.